part of the Royal Free Charity.
This is Royal Free Radio.
Well, I now have on the telephone Nicola Whitehill. Hi, Nicola.
Hi, John.
Now, Nicola has phoned in because she's a friend. I guess we could call you a friend of the Royal Free, couldn't you? You've been there so many times.
Well, I've been a patient for 21 years, having lived with a rare disease for 22 years.
There you are. So you are a friend of the Royal Free then?
Most definitely.
Now, tell me about this rare disease that you have.
Oh, John. Well, in 1997, age 24, I presented with symptoms that were pretty rapid with the onset. So I had swollen fingers, I had difficulty in swallowing, and generally just felt out of sorts. Anyway.
And what was your sort of first thought when you had that? Did you think it was something serious, or did you think it just fairly normal?
I thought that I needed to stop going out partying as much. In those days, I was living in Nottingham and living quite the dream. And Nottingham has got a very vibrant nightlife. So I was working in the pharmaceutical industry as well as studying part-time distance learning for a law degree when the symptoms appeared. Anyway, I eventually got a diagnosis because with this rare disease, it's called Scleroderma. So
Scleroderma, there you are. That's not easy to say, is it, really?
It's not, John. So it's sclero, meaning thickening, and derma, meaning skin, because one of the initial symptoms is thickening of the skin. And in fact, when I came to the Royal Free Hospital as a patient in 1998 in December to go and see who is now Professor Dane Black, literally I could hardly move my limbs, I could hardly walk because the skin was so tight in my body, around my body. It felt as though that my body was too big and that my skin had shrunk in the wash, so to speak.
Sounds horrendous. And
yes,
was this what you would call an early diagnosis, or
I was lucky in a way, John, in that I was working in the pharmaceutical industry as well as I actually have a degree in applied and human biology. So I have a bit of understanding of how the body's working, and you know, I was in the field of medics, and it was the medics really that were very kind and said to me that you know, I really needed to go to a specialist centre. And the Royal Free Hospital is actually the UK's leading specialist centre for this disease, Scleroderma. So when I arrived in December 1998, I was in a very, very bad way, because sadly there is no cure for this disease, and chemotherapy is one of the options used as a treatment. And in fact, I had 7 years of chemotherapy. So that started out as IV transfusions, but then went on to tablets for my symptoms to then become stable. So although I no longer take any immunosuppressants, I still have to take a very powerful vasodilator to keep my blood vessels open, as I also have a problem with my circulation, and that disease is called Raynaud's phenomenon. So that's when the fingers, other body parts can turn blue, white, and it's extremely painful.
Right. Is it extremities like fingers and toes, or other areas?
Yes. Well, other areas can be included as well, so ears, nose, tongue. But sadly, there's not really an awful lot known about Scleroderma or Raynaud's. And so that's where, because of my personal experience, and also because of my eternal gratitude to the team at the Royal Free and the Scleroderma unit, to Professor Denton, who then took over from Professor Black, then I've devoted all of my spare time, because it really is a full-time job managing the symptoms, of trying to raise awareness of the disease, as well as to raise awareness of the actual landscape for rare disease patients in general. Because although the rare diseases are rare per se, and to be qualified as rare, that means that that rare diseases are defined as life-threatening or chronically debilitating that affect no more than 5 in 10,000 people in the European Union. So you can see we're talking about a very small number of people, which makes it very difficult then for any research to be carried out because of the small numbers that are involved of patients. But in any event, the 3 golden hallmarks for rare diseases per se are for best patient practice are early diagnosis, expert specialist centres, and access to innovative medicines at research centres. Because taking part in a research trial, which I have taken part in several at the Royal Free Centre there, which is why I do the work that I do for, or it's my hobby, as I say, in between managing the symptoms, raising awareness and setting up the hashtag Scleroderma Free World and hashtag Raynaud Free World, with the view to try and raise some investments in funds for medical research. Because without medical research, then the treatments are not going to be improved. But to take part in a clinical trial, I would actually recommend, and I'm a patient research ambassador for the National Institute of Health Research, representing the Royal Free, Dermatology and the MSK departments. And there's actually a video of me on YouTube endorsing taking part in clinical trials, but only in the respect that they are being conducted by well-respected centres and, being constantly monitored and observed. And in those conditions, for a patient, I would thoroughly recommend taking part because actually you get what I call a gold standard MOT as such, because with the criteria of the trials, you have to be extremely thorough. So there's more time for observationals of your own situation than on a normal routine appointment. And of course, by taking part in a clinical trial, then it might be that you're having the next what could be the cure for scleroderma.
Absolutely, and also helping other people, which is just as important as well. So take me through. You wake up in the morning. Take me through what you have to do to get yourself moving in the morning.
Oh, well, this again, we're living with this disease, John, is quite different. Well, it's extremely challenging. Every day is different. I've been doing it for 22 years now, and I still haven't managed to find my eureka moment. But what I have, or every day, is a challenge to try and find the best way of managing the symptoms without causing a flare. Because if the symptoms get worse, then I'll be back into hospital on an IV drip, and clearly that's not what I want to be doing. So during the winter, I'm pretty much stay in a one constant temperature to prevent having any Raynaud's attacks, because they really are quite debilitating for me now, with my body being as fragile as it is, with the scleroderma as well.
And are they affected by temperature?
Yes, almost definitely. If the temperature's below, about 10 degrees, then I won't be going out. And if I do go out, it will only be for medical appointments, and I will be dressed in my ski wear outfit. But even in the summer, I think there's a photograph of me that appeared in the Daily Mail in 2013 on the hottest day of 2013, and there I am on Southport Promenade, which I live in Southport, even though I'm a patient at the Royal Free, which has been essential for best patient care for me to still have access to the expert centre. And here locally in Southport, I'm very grateful to the rheumatology team that keep an eye on my sort of day-to-day, and also my GP practice as well, for the constant emollients and prescriptions, medicines that I might need. Now, you asked earlier...
So I was saying, I'll just to reiterate, sorry, you were talking about this photograph of you.
Oh, yes, and I'm wearing Ugg boots and gloves to try and prevent a Raynaud's attack.
Right.
That's how sensitive that I am to my fingers or my toes changing colour.
So the sun can't get to you. That's one of the things that's not good for you, yeah?
Well, funny you mentioned that. In 2003, I lived in Fuerteventura, one of the Canary Islands, for 5 months to see if the sun would help. And certainly a warmer climate does make the skin feel a bit softer. But ultimately, now I avoid being in the sun because of the immunosuppressants and the chemotherapy that I've had. That I'm actually quite prone now to being for skin cancer. So although it is nice being in the sun, but actually it's not really the best for my condition. But in relation to the colour change with the digits, it doesn't matter. It's just the slightest temperature change. So even when I was living abroad, I still had the Raynaud attacks because everywhere was air conditioned. So that would trigger it off.
So if you go, I just don't understand. So if you go, for example, from the heat into an air-conditioned room, that could trigger it, yeah? Yes,
oh, definitely.
And vice versa, if you leave the air conditioning and go out into the sun, same thing.
Well, hopefully that the air conditioning is likely to have cooled. So if you go out into the sun, then hopefully it'll warm up. It's really quite difficult to control in a way, other than, as I say, to just try and keep the same constant temperature. Now, one of the treatments that is used for this is an IV treatment, which is 5 days of 40 hours of what's called iloprost. And I've had it twice, and I cannot tolerate it because it gives basically what it's doing is opening the blood vessels to try and let more blood flow. Because the reason that they're losing the colour in the digits is because the blood is in effect stopped flowing to the digits, and that's why when the blood does come back flowing into the digits, the pain is horrendous. I can't describe it. Even this description does not do the pain justice. So imagine slamming your hand in a car door. That doesn't even do the pain of what it's like when the circulation comes back.
Really? Yeah.
So that's why, John, I stay in, because it's easier to try and manage. And that's the other thing. The treatments that are given for it lower blood pressure. So obviously, you've got side effects there of dizziness and blacking out. So not ideal. But in relation to the scleroderma, again, there's no cure, and treatments are hit and miss. So an early diagnosis is essential in the hope that a treatment might be have some success in trying to ease the symptoms. But if it is that the disease is attacks the internal organs, which it does because it's called systemic sclerosis, so it's like a cousin to multiple sclerosis. This is systemic sclerosis in where it affects everywhere. And in that instance, then the patient will need an organ transplant, or one of the treatments that could be considered is a stem cell transplant. Now, I was actually on the list to have a stem cell transplant back in 1998 when I arrived at the Royal Free. And luckily for me, I responded to the intense IV chemotherapy and tablet regime that I was being given whilst waiting on the list. But I do know I have got fellow patients that I know of that have had transplants that are doing brilliantly. And I mean, my heart goes out to them, extremely brave. And that's what this disease, if you survived it, then you're very, very lucky, because, in fact, John, only yesterday I received an email, sadly, from a chap who he contacted me probably about 6 months ago, actually, when his wife was first diagnosed with scleroderma. And yesterday he contacted me again to tell me that sadly she passed, and she was 51. And so she literally had 6 months. And because the disease had got into organs, there was nothing really that the medics could do. And that's why I'm, really quite vocal about an early diagnosis is essential to prevent life-threatening damage.
Now, we've been chatting earlier on before you came on the air, and I know you've got a couple of dogs.
I have.
So you manage to get out with them sometimes?
I have a scooter. In fact, I've written about this, and there's a photo on my blog of the article Mobility. And I go around the block on my scooter with the Dream Team. But as for walking, and my global headline on the internet here is that I am the real-life Tin Man, because I'm in constant pain. And so doing any physical exertion is extremely painful, exhausting, and just requires such huge effort to do. Even as we were saying earlier, the routine for me to be able to get out the door will take about 3 hours.
Wow.
So, what that involves is that I have to have a bath to ease my joints and warm my body up as well as with the scleroderma. Although my skin, per se, has been cured from scleroderma, I'm still living with the after effects of the damage it's done to my body. But also my skin requires a lot of attention and self-discipline and care from me. So by that I mean is that I've got to bathe in liquid paraffin. I then have to moisturise with emollient. I can only wear certain fabrics, really cotton. So I'm restricted with the clothing items. In fact, my inner Bond girl cleared off years ago, John.
And I'm fascinated by this scooter. Is this an electric scooter?
Yes, it's a battery-operated one.
Right, okay.
And it's a little three-wheeler one. It's I think it's called a Go-Go.
And you haven't knocked anybody over yet?
No, it won't go that quick, which is much to the delight of my little white dog, because she's not really the most athletic. It's the brown dog that needs to be going out to just get rid of some of that little half Jack Russell, half Yorkshire Terrier extra bit of energy that she has for life.
And does that mean that you can get onto the seafront from where you live very easily or not?
No, I don't, but I am lucky in that just not too far from me, and I can access with my scooter, is that I'm on the periphery of the Birkdale golf course, so the sand dunes and that terrain, so it really is very, quite lovely. And that most definitely has helped in relation to, the psychological aspect of what my day-to-day reality now is.
Right.
Considering on the 1st of March 2004, I qualified as a self-employed practicing barrister, having taken 6 years of chemotherapy before that.
And then you had to give it up, I guess.
I did, because the Tin Man body, wasn't up to the feet, sadly.
Right.
But that's where, now it's a full-time job managing the symptoms, but if I can be using any of my background from my pharmaceutical days to my barrister days, that, for being a professional advocate of raising awareness, and as I say, I'm just eternally grateful to Professor Denton and the Scleroderma unit and just the Royal Free Hospital for keeping me alive.
Well, I guess you could also help people if they got any issues regarding the law. I suppose you could help them online, or do you need to be a practicing lawyer to do that?
Well, it depends with where you're at with that, John. But ultimately, yes, I'd have to be registered with Chambers, and so at the moment I'm a non-practicing barrister. However, I have, in 2016, I wrote an article which was published on with the Provide Law team here in Liverpool. But it's really, when you're in pain all the time and you're not feeling too well, and it's just to even get out the door is a huge effort. So, but on a good day, I do miss the fact that I'm not getting up and in my pinstripe suit and going off and doing a job that I absolutely loved. But I'm grateful for that I'm still here to be able to tell the tale of scleroderma, John, because a lot of my peers aren't, especially after 22 years, because the mortality to reach even 10 years is about, the figures are not too good.
I now have this vision, Nicola, of you in your pinstripe suit on your three-wheel scooter.
Thanks, John. Well, we'll replace the pinstripes with. I've used, in fact, until about May. I've still got my, as I say, my Alps gear, my snowsuits on.
Right.
So I look like the Michelin Man.
One of the reasons why we've recorded this interview is because we wanted to broadcast it for Rare Disease Day.
Yes.
And I'm right in thinking that's the 28th of February.
Well, it's usually the 28th, John, because that's the last day in February. But, of course, this year we have a leap year. So this year it's the 29th of February.
Okay, so unfortunately we can't broadcast it on the 29th, but we're going to do it on my programme on Tuesday the 26th, I think it is.
25th, I think.
Is it? Just check that quickly, but I'm sure you're right. No, you are right, definitely. Always trust a lawyer, that's what I always say.
Well, that's the thing, John, you know, and that was one of the golden rules you learnt at bar school, was that when you've got your witness, you never ask a question unless you know the answer to it.
What we're going to do is we're going to put all the information up onto our website, and we're also going to put it on our Facebook page. I'm going to liaise with David to do that, because David's our expert in that kind of stuff. So we'll give it as much cover as we can. It's been fascinating talking to you, and it's something I could do for probably hours on end.
Oh, thanks, John. That's most kind.
No, seriously, I've really enjoyed it.
Get out more.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just to say, you know, from a patient point of view, you know, just to say huge thanks to what you and the guys there at the team are doing, because, you know, well, certainly from my perspective of living with a disease where there is no cure, and I won't break into song there with a James song, you know, each day is, well, it's quite a bleak place. So, of course, having the music there and the support of the charity and the radio, then, you know, you really are bringing some comfort to patients. So thank you for all that you do there.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And so just before we say goodbye, Nicola, you wanted to mention something about the T-shirts.
I did, and I'd just like to say to any listeners that if you check out on the website there or on the Facebook page, but the Royal Free Charity, we've been doing hashtag Scleroderma Free World and hashtag Raynaud Free World T-shirts. So I've got one here that one lucky person could win if they would like to comment on your page, and you can pick out the winner at random at some point, say the following day.
We will do. That'd be lovely. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, John, and I hope the lucky winner enjoys wearing it and shares the same vision as me, that the Scleroderma-free world.
Let's hope so. Without music, I'm not sure that I could cope terribly well. But we have something else in common, Nicola. That
right? That's scary, John.
We have a favourite track, don't we?
We do.
Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd.
That's right.
And what I'm going to do is say thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. And I'm going to leave you with Lynyrd Skynyrd and Sweet Home Alabama. Nicola, thank you.
Well, thanks, John.
Thanks for listening
to Royal Free Radio.